ready for the interview. And if you get a cue live on the laptop, watch what I'm gonna do. Welcome to the show, let them know we got a point of view. Hey, yo, let's have a combo. Say what you feel, be real, that's the motto. Real talk pronto, Dr. D, PhD, hit an intro. Hold up, wait, gotta be social. Network global, a home for the local. Gotta be social. Network global, a home for the local.
All right, we're here with Michele Englehart and Leslie Goyette, the creators of Maysville, the movie, which was a really awesome movie. Thank you, ladies, for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
So I definitely watched the movie, as we were saying before we started. And I found it very, very interesting, just kind of weaving through this tale. But before we get into the movie, how did you two meet?
So Leslie and I both have kids who do some acting for commercials, film, TV. And she's in Portland, I'm in Seattle. But one of my children, my daughter, and her son were together in a commercial, DreamWorks commercial about 8 years ago, right, Leslie? I can't believe it was that long ago. Yeah, so that's how we met. And we kept in touch over Facebook casually, after spending the week together filming that commercial. And then one day, Leslie pinged me and said, "Hey, I saw Forrest, my son, in a short film, and I just think he'd be great for this script I'm writing." And I'm thinking, okay, I don't know this lady, but that's kind of cool. And okay, I guess she writes she writes her own scripts, apparently. What I didn't know, or quickly found out, is that I was one of the first people she had shown any script she's ever written to anybody else but herself and her husband. So anyway, she sent me the script, and I absolutely just fell in love with it. So that was the Maysville script. The setup of Maysville is the part with the young leads, the kids, and it just gripped me right from within just a few pages. So
wow, that's amazing.
One thing led to another. Here we are.
How'd you come up with the idea for this movie? What was the kind of genesis for that? What's the beginning of this idea?
Well, like Michele said, I have been, and Dr. D, I know you're going to understand what I say when I say this. I've been a closet writer for most of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never shared my stories and my writing with anyone, because when you share something that you write, I compare it to letting someone see you naked, because it's a part of you, right?
Yeah.
It's something that you completely created from beginning to end. And, people can kind of judge your intelligence. People can kind of judge your talent. They can, so for me, I would write all the time, but I would never share it with anyone because I was too afraid of letting anyone see it. So I had actually been working with another couple of young filmmakers on another project, and they really wanted help in learning how, making a film beginning to end. So I was, kind of helping them out a little bit. And, they wanted to use my son on one of their projects, on this project. And they kept saying, what kind of ideas? We want a Stranger Things kind of thing, and so on. And that, horror is just not my thing. It's just not my thing. So I started writing Maysville about, young boys and so on. And I kind of based the characters on me and my sister growing up. I grew up in Appalachia, a very poverty-stricken area. We were poor growing up as kids. And so the story came fast, really, really fast, because I knew the area. I knew, the relationship. The relationship was me and my sister. So it was really easy to put on paper. And it grew so fast. Well, the other filmmakers weren't interested in doing a period piece. They wanted to stick with their horror genre, which was fine. It was totally fine. But Maysville grew out of that.
Oh, that's interesting. And this was, correct me if I'm wrong, a first time feature length film, correct, for both of you?
First film, period.
Okay, so how did you even like start this process? I mean, you hadn't done this before. How did you even begin this whole journey? Like,
Leslie is more of a risk taker than me. So, she after I read the script, she came, she drove up to Seattle with her son, and we went through a table read. And after the table read, where we just read through the script together out loud. But after the table read, she said to me, "Hey, we're two women. We can do this. We've never done it before, but I think we can do this. Do you want to do this with me? Because I've never done this before, and I need help." I was like, dang, I would never ask, honestly, that's such a crazy idea. I would not even think of it, let alone ask some person I didn't know very well.
Between the two of us, between Michele and I, our kids have done a lot of projects. And we had been on the lowest project you can get with no budget, student films. And then, they had worked for DreamWorks and NBC and SYFY channel. So we had, between Michele and I, we had really seen the scope of different filmmaking. Lots of money and no money. And we knew a lot of the roles that it took to bring together a project. We knew who the AD was, and we knew who the second AC was, and we knew who the gaffer was, and we knew who the DP was. And because that's who we talk to, in the downtime when the actors are doing their thing and so on. And we actually learned a lot just by being parents on a set. And so I really said, Michele, I know you're a smart woman. You are so smart. And I'm very creative when it comes to getting things done. And there is not another person on this planet that can do a more precise spreadsheet than this woman right here. And if there was anyone who was going to keep us on a budget, it was Michele. And, she's like, this is what we're going to need. And I'm like, well, it's my job to figure out how we're going to do it. Between the two of us, it really blended well. It's a great partnership.
I do think there's an element of fate. I mean, Leslie did not know I was maybe good at a spreadsheet or my skill set in general. She might have had a hunch, I don't know, a sixth sense maybe, Leslie. But I do think there's an element of fate, and I'm not one to really believe in fate. But in this case, I just kind of think, wow, how did this land in my lap? Not only that, but how we got it done. I mean, for two women, two people who have never done anything like this before, somehow we put our heads together, we took a big jump and we went for it, and we somehow got it done. Looking back, it boggles my mind sometimes that we did it.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. I love the product. So, okay, I have a question. So, what was easier than you thought about the process, and what was harder than you thought about doing this?
Oh, that is a good question. No one's ever asked us that before. What was easiest?
I think
what? I'll tell you what came to us really easy, and it shouldn't have. It should not have come to us easy, was locations. We found one central location, and when you watch the film, first of all, we're doing a period piece set in the 1920s, which is insane. Even major studios that have millions of dollars will back up and rethink about doing a period piece because they're so expensive. So we found this one centralized location right exactly in the middle of Portland and Seattle, two tiny little sister towns called Centralia and Chehalis. And we had 17 period specific locations that we had to find. And we found them all in one day, just by talking to locals. And there's a local historian there. Her name is Mary Kurtzbein. And she jumped on board to help us. And she's like, oh, you need a steam engine? Let me take you. We've got our own. And it's a private steam engine. And they own their own private track. So we didn't have to jump through any major hoops to get to use those tracks. We had a 1929 courthouse. Oh, got it right here. You need a mill. Oh, there's a mill just a few miles down the road. You need old farmhouses. Oh, and Centralia, Washington is known as Hub City, USA. And every weekend they have classic car shows. So all we had to do was show up on the weekends and get to know these car owners who had all these classic cars from the 20s that we needed to use. Everything that we needed for locations just kind of fell in our lap. We needed a ballroom from the 1920s, and we got one. We needed a doctor's office. I mean, everything in one day, location-wise, fell into our lap. That's the one easy thing.
And it was just about all free.
Wow.
Free. I mean, that's how easy. So what I was going to say is just finding those two towns. So Leslie and I agree. I mean, it was just ridiculous how that just also just fell into our laps through another producer we happen to know. He wanted to film something down there that didn't work out. And he's like, hey, you guys might really be, this might be a great setting for Maysville. And it happens to be equidistant, these two towns between Portland and Seattle, which is where Leslie and I live. So, and then where we got, our cast and crew are also from Seattle and Portland, and it just all made sense.
Oh, that's incredible.
And the people down there were...
As far as the hardest thing, I have to go back to probably raising the money. It's so hard. It's so hard, Dr. P, to ask for money and to ask for, friends and family and people that know you extensively and so on. Hey, we're doing this project. Would you be willing to donate to our Indiegogo campaign and so on? So I will admit, I think the hardest part was raising the money.
I don't think I could raise the money again like we did for this film. And the idea is, you go to your friends and family and then their friends and family and just all the connections you've ever had in life. And you ask this kind of, as I see it, like this one-time ask, this one-time favor. And then you make this product. And so the product is the film. And then you try to leverage the film to see, if investors would be interested, get you to that next big rung on the ladder for funding. I do think you just do this one. It was hard to fundraise. Once you start asking, though, I think it gets a little easier, just like anything you start doing. But what I would have said, I'll just say, one of the hardest things for me, what comes to mind is casting. I thought casting was really hard for quite a few of the characters. I mean, Leslie, you should really speak to this too, because you might differ in my opinion, because you wrote it. So you have a vision. Leslie has a vision in her head of these characters, so way closer to these characters than, just a person who's read the script a few times. So just trying to figure out, good acting is so important to a film. I mean, you got a bad actor, it can ruin the film. And we had, even though we fundraised, we did not have much money. We did pay our actors, but we didn't have a lot of money. We couldn't get a star. We're in Seattle and Portland, so it's pretty backwater in terms of the entertainment industry. So what do? You just try to do what you can to pull the best actors you can in the area. We did find, for some of our leads, we just had to go to LA. But for the most part, the casting was done out of the Pacific Northwest, and I think we did, in the end, a really good job with casting. And I'd love to hear your input, for sure, and have an honest conversation. But generally the feedback we get is like, wow, these actors, I mean, there's nobody, really well known in the film, but they're overall really solid actors, and not just solid actors, but fitting for the role. I thought we did a really good job at casting, but it was hard, and it took a long time.
Yeah, I thought the acting was really good. I mean, I really didn't know what to expect. I try not to have too much of just I'm just going to go in, I'm going to watch this, just watch it unfold. And actually, I think the gentleman whose son died, his emotion, what I thought was really powerful. I thought just that anger, that constant anger that he had, to hold on to that on a regular basis, I feel like would be hard to do. Just constant with that. So that really spoke to me primarily with the acting.
Yeah. And then you don't find out until the very last 3 minutes of the film why he's holding all of that. Right. You think it's one thing, but you come to find out that there's something else, a complete twist at the end that shines a completely different light on the whole film as to why he is the way he is.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, emotion, when somebody emotes something and it feels like real, there's something to that. There's, whether it's kind of a violent emotion, or it's a sweet emotion, whatever it is, there's something special when someone can
Yeah.
go to that place, which I think was really interesting. What makes me think about, what were your emotions? What did you learn about yourself when you were doing this project?
Mm. There were a lot of tears for me. There
Mm,
were a lot of tears. I was really vested with these characters,
mhm.
and I had slept with them and lived with them in my head for over a year before we had started any kind of um, actual production. And just seeing these events rolling out in front of my eyes again, it was very emotional for me, you know. And, sometimes I would say, we got that on one take. That's exactly what I wanted. When the actor you're talking about, his name is Brian Sutherland, and he was, most recently he was in Nicolas Cage's film Pig.
Yeah.
He's a really good actor. He's done lots of television and lots of films, and he's actually worked with Michelle's children and my children. So that's how we knew Brian. Um, and Brian is, loosely based on, someone I knew, uh, and so I was able to really communicate with him how to read this character. Because if you read the words in the script, it can be interpreted so many different ways. But he really was like a boiling pot on the stove, always boiling, but you never knew when it was going to boil over. And when he says the line, if my boy has to sleep in the ground, you sure as hell can sleep on it. That was, it was, it was really,
Yeah.
really triggering to say that to, a then 12-year-old little boy. For me, it was emotional. It was an emotional moment during filming. Michelle?
Um, I would say,
Yes.
I said earlier, I'm not a risk taker. I feel like most days of filming and a lot of days before filming and after filming, we were I was being pushed beyond my comfort zone so very often, which is something I'm not used to on a regular basis. And I feel like it really tested me and kind of made me feel like, looking back, I feel like, wow, that made me really feel like alive, like to be totally immersed in something and to try to figure out like how to resolve so many problems that came our way to get this film done safely and within budget and whatnot, and just the crazy stuff that can happen on a film set with a whole bunch of people you feel like but you're not, they're not people you work with, professionally out. These are just people you're pulling together that from other places, and so you're taking a risk that way. So lots of risk taking, I really feel like, made me learn that I can take on a lot more than I thought I was capable of doing.
One
And I
thing
liked
with
it.
Michelle was Michelle is one of our producers. She was all over the insurance side of things. And the barn burn scene just about put Michelle over the edge.
and yeah.
She's like, oh, this could be an insurance nightmare. This could be awful. This could be horrible. And I'm like, I promise you, Michelle, it's controlled. It's completely controlled. I've got a fire truck here. I've got the fire chief here.
That's right.
And she's like, but you don't know. You guys are inside that barn while it's on fire. I mean, it was just, I felt in total control. But Michelle was like, oh, insurance.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, I heard it from the insurance. They're like, no, this is no. So we had to come up with something really creative. I think even the big studios are challenged to, pull up, and they do pull it off. But insurance can just make you absolutely broke, or there's just no way we could remotely afford actually doing a true barn burn. So we had to get creative for that scene, and we actually burned, how do you explain it, Leslie, a fence in the foreground, like 20 or 30 feet in front of the actual barn, and given, foreshortening, the angle of
Yeah,
the camera.
it's a camera trick to make it look like it was at the eve of the roof line. And so it looked like it was the actual barn. And by placing the actor the way he was and turning the camera at an angle, it made it look like it was the actual barn. And so then we were able to then go back in with special effects and put the flames on top of the roof of the barn. So we didn't actually burn the barn, but it sure looks like we did.
Yeah.
It does look like it, too. Yeah.
It was important to have real flames, I thought, looking back. But, you know, when you think of shows like Game of Thrones, just all those shows that have all the fake visual effects with the fake flames, it takes you out of it. It looks like a video game.
Yeah, it's so obvious too. Like that, it
So
feels like
obvious.
so obvious. Like a buddy of mine, we have a segment of my podcast where it's like we review movies every 2 weeks. Just like a fun thing. I love doing all different stuff in my podcast. And then we were doing Death on the Nile, I believe, with
Great one.
Rana, great director,
Yeah.
right? Awesome. But the CG was so bad. And this is like a big movie with huge
Right.
actors.
Right,
It
and
was
CG
so
is so
obvious how-
advanced now. There's no reason for that.
It was so obvious how bad it was. It bothered me during the watching it. So like I appreciate the commentary about that.
Yeah, no, we agree.
Yeah. So that's why it was important to us to have real flames close to the actor. You know, we wanted that. And you know what we ended up using, Dr. P? We ended up using Vaseline. That was what we put on the fence because we hired a pyrotechnician and he taught us that what it will do is it burns slowly. So we could do take after take after take, and it'll stay in one spot. So however many cuts we make, the flames will be centralized in the same spot. So we literally got all over this fence with Vaseline and lit it on fire because it's petroleum and it burned, but it burned nice and slow and aggressively. And I thought that was just brilliant.
Yeah, this pyrotech, he happens to live in, you know, one of the towns we filmed in. Just, you know, small town, just they happen to have their local pyrotech.
Oh, project.
So
And this really came together. I mean, just the different people was like the fate comment makes a lot of sense now.
I kid you not, you have no idea. When we were looking for everything that we needed, one of the fundraisers that we did was we held a local dinner and we invited everyone in the community to come to this dinner. And, you know, if you came to the dinner, then you could sign up to be an extra. And that's how we found our town extras, you know. And while we were there at the end of the dinner, we said, okay, well, while we've got you here, these are the things that we need. We need a steam engine. We need a courthouse. We need a doctor's office. We need a general store. We need, you know, cobblestone streets. We need all these old cars. And and by the way, we need a barn to burn down. Ha ha ha. And by the end of the night, people lined up for us to volunteer and to give us the things that we needed. And all the old cars got them like that. You know, we even found a gentleman who was so kind inside his home. He had not changed any of the decor from when he was a little boy, and he's in his 90s. So his home was decorated from the 1920s. It had 1920s wallpaper, it had the stove, the refrigerator, everything from the 1920s. And we were able to do our inside shots inside his home. And the other home that we use, it's an actual museum in this town. And it was already furnished and they allowed us to use it as long as we promised not to cause any kind of harm or damage to the property. So those sets were ready to go. All we had to do was walk in. Amazing.
What's interesting is like all these amazing things happen. I'm sure there's other films you want to make in the future. In your mind, you think, will this happen again? Like, or will you have this expectation like this may not be how this is going to be going in the future? Yeah.
I don't think we could get that lucky twice. What do you
Right.
think, Leslie?
You know what? I will be honest with you, Dr. P. I think one of the things that we did was we partnered with these towns and we let them know who we were, what we were doing, what our intention was, and we never once made ourselves out to be something that we were not. And we were honest, and we told them that we would need help. And I think the thing that we learned from this, there were two things that we learned from this, is that one, that people want to help people. People genuinely do want to help people, but people are afraid to ask for help.
Yeah.
People just don't ask for help. And so when we tell them that we're going to make a feature film in your small town, a lot of people are like, how exciting, this could be something great. I want to be a part of that, being a part of that. And if you watch our credits at the end, you'll see so many people, we think, because if it weren't for these people, the film wouldn't have gotten made. So that's one thing we definitely learned. And the other thing, Michele coined this phrase, was the power of the ask. And there's so much power behind humbling yourself and showing, just the human side of yourself by asking for help. So
the worst thing people can say is no. And it's just one of those things that, I remember being kind of like, I'm kind of shy sometimes. We all have some shyness in us. It's hard to ask. It's hard to ask. But once you start asking, it gets easier. And it's like, oh, the worst they can say is no. Can't do that, But so often, so much more often than we thought, the answer was yes. Yes, and how about this too? Do you need that? Like, it's ridiculous how supportive these towns were. And just also to add to the support of those towns. So, we held a dinner, we communicated at that dinner what we were doing, what the movie was about, casting, we need help casting, we need these locations, as Leslie said, all these things. And I do think that brought us a lot of goodwill and interest. I mean, these are small towns. In the towns themselves, like they're trying to figure out that whole county, Lewis County, they're trying to figure out how to promote tourism in their county. And this, some people thought could be one way to do that, to have a film, a historic, period-based 1920s film being made right there in Lewis County. So I do think that helped us as well.
And it makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's just so interesting, like the behind the scenes, how something gets made, how it comes together. And it also makes me think of what was the last day of shooting like? What would take me through that day, like beginning to end? How did that come together? And what were your feelings about it once it wrapped?
Well, that's interesting because we did 3 6-day weeks in a row, and then we had to stop because of that fire scene. Because in the state of Washington, on the West Coast in general, we have really bad fires.
That's right.
So there was a burn ban. You couldn't even have a campfire. You couldn't even have your grill in your backyard in the month of August. So we had to wait till mid-September to finish the film. So we wrapped filming in 3 weeks, and then we came back in 3 weeks, and we did the last little bit of the film, which was the barn scene. And the very last scene was the really intense scene between little Teddy and Buck. And it's where little Teddy tries to escape in the middle of the night, and Buck catches him, right? And that film was shot at 2:30 in the morning, and it was 25 degrees outside, and little Teddy had a tank top on. It was freezing. And here they are trying to do this intense scene, right? And we're running 2 cameras because we're trying to get it as a scene like that. You really don't want to repeat over and over. It's hard. It's hard on the actors to stay in it emotionally. It's hard on them it was really hard on Brian to kind of be abusive to a child. That's hard. So we tried to get it. So we did it in, I think, 3 takes, running 2 cameras and running the sound. And when it was over and we did that martini shot, this is the last shot, I don't know, again, full of emotions. And the DP just looked right in my face and said, congratulations, Ethan. He's done so many films and has so much experience. And then it was just a flood of emotions because we did it. We got it in the can. We actually got this in the can. And then Michelle, who was my right hand. So when I was always busy with the actual action of the film, Michelle is behind the scenes running everything. So she was my unit production manager. She was making sure that as soon as we got done at 2:30 in the morning, there was chili waiting for everyone, a big hot bowl of chili and cheese and drinks and hot coffees and making sure that all of that was there for the actors. And, I know it was a relief for her because, you know,
Leslie, when you said, you knew you had it in the can, and our cinematographer said, congratulations. I get the shivers just when you said that. I really do. And I remember that moment, but I also remember thinking at that moment, do we have it in the can? Do we have a movie? Leslie, you know better than me. I'm like, what are we missing? What did we forget? What's, because we hadn't seen it, just about any of it, So I was still, a nervous Nelly and just, thinking, oh, do we? So, and then also just feeding people, super important to feed your cast and crew. We were on location down there for, 6-day weeks, 3 weeks in a row, people away from their families. It gets stressful. And one big lesson learned is it's, people feed them well. It's this seemingly basic thing, but it goes a long way to making the people who you've asked to be with you for 3 intense weeks, very long days, happy or happier. It goes a long way. People really appreciate good food.
Another thing, how the town stepped up for us. We went around literally door to door asking, hi, this is who we are, and this is what we're doing. Would you be willing to donate dinner for one night for our cast and crew? And we had, I can't even tell you how many restaurants were like, oh, sure. How many people are we feeding? I'm like, 30. And they're like, you bet, we'll do that. And they just wanted to be a part of it, and it saved so much money on our budget, so much money. But also people got, restaurant style food, and they got fed very well, and it was great. It was a great way to just spread, the community. And some of the people who were on set that are locals were like, oh, we're having Bill and Bees tonight, or it was great. So that was a great way to help, the community helped us out there too.
I couldn't believe how many restaurants said yes. Yeah, sure, we'll do that. It's like, oh, really? Okay, well, then I'm gonna keep asking. Isn't that surprising?
It's so surprising.
And maybe also because it is, and surely has something to do with it being small towns down there. I'm in Seattle. I don't know, maybe the restaurants would, but not like they really stepped up down there, like in a way that I think is just, to me, really surprising.
I think that it's kind of like you have a different picture of other humans sometimes when you're not really spending time with people and you're not asking and you're not getting deep with other people. You assume a lot of the worst things about people. Oh, people are mean. Nobody helps each other out. There's a narrative of that. But if the reality is very different than what the headline is, often you pull the curtain back, life is actually way different than what it's being projected to be. It sounds like that's what you found also.
Yeah, just making that personal human connection with people, it often produces a different outcome.
Yeah, and I think it's an important message. Part of the whole process of making a movie is just the spirit of humans, of people, is much better than we think it is for that. And I've lived all over the world, and I've always seen the goodness in people. There's so many people. It's always different than what you think it is, especially if you expose yourself to that. I'm in the same part of the world. I'm in Blaine, Washington. I understand the burn ban and all that stuff. So,
you're in Blaine. Jeez,
I'm
I didn't
in Blaine.
even know that.
Yes, we're all Pacific Northwestern.
Yeah.
Why were you?
I don't know. I wasn't asked. Okay.
Next time.
What's the next movie? I'll be in it. I don't even know what it is. It's amazing, So
if you're in Blaine, so you're close to Canada.
I am.
And I don't know how much you know about like the local or just the film industry in general, but Canada, Vancouver's just got it going on with
Yes.
filming. They have had a huge film incentive for decades.
Yes.
Which has taken away a lot of the filming from Washington. We used to do a lot more films here in Washington State. But once that incentive hit in Vancouver, and then the incentives in all these other states came along, and Washington State never had a decent incentive. Oregon actually has has had a much better incentive than Washington's ever had. So Washington kind of became known as the flyover state. Nobody would film here. So it's a little sad that way. But we just got a significant film incentive this year. It's going this coming year. It was just approved. So that's really cool to see that. Hopefully we'll get more bigger films and bigger budget, more money.
Talk about
here.
that. Like, the average viewer of this may not even know what incentive means.
Yeah.
Can you define that?
Yeah, I can try. So Leslie, help me out. So, if a studio or a bigger budget film wants to, figure out where they're going to film the next, I don't know, big Marvel film. So big budget. Where do they go? So they've got big dollars to spend in any given state they choose. So states have come up with a tax incentive or like a tax credit for the money that they spend in that particular state. That studio, that production company gets the tax back. So they're spending, it's to incentivize a production to come to your state and spend their big budget here. So
usually there are caveats to that, meaning that you have to hire X amount of people from the state. So you have to have X amount of people working behind the camera. So 20% of your crew has to be from the state of Washington, and maybe 5% of your cast has to be from the state of Washington. There are some little caveats that, are applied to the incentive as well. But what it essentially is, of the dollars that you present your budget when you're done with the film, and out of that budget, you will get an incentive back after the film is in the can. And it's a little bit of money that comes back to you, and it can be a percentage of whatever the state allows.
Mm-hmm. And I think there's 37 states at least now that have some sort of significant tax incentive in their state to draw this, to appeal to these studios. And it's a huge range. So Washington does have a tax incentive. In the past, it's only been a few $1 million. Was it Louisiana, Georgia, now New Mexico? All these states, some of these states it's almost unlimited, or it's hundreds of millions. I think one or two are considering just no cap at all. That's how beneficial they feel it is to their state.
Washington's got to do it, man. Washington's one of the prettiest states in the United States. It's mind-blowingly beautiful.
Yes.
It absolutely
hands
is.
down. A lot of commercials are filmed here in the summer because it's so beautiful. Oregon has similar terrain.
Yeah.
So yeah. And we made Washington look like Appalachia.
Right.
It's really flexible. It can look like a lot of different places. We have a lot of different geography here: the water, the mountains, the desert, the plains,
Yep.
the Palouse, the rivers. I mean, the lake. It's just gorgeous.
Yeah, it's an incredible state. Like, it's so pretty, like, especially in the summertime. So it's surprising to me that there wouldn't be more filming here, because it's like you could capture almost any movie landscape in this state. It's like it's
Right.
really-
But we are limited to a 90 days, in the summer, because we get so much rain. That does deter a lot of filming.
But on the flip side, a lot of people come here in the summer because we have so much light and with such long days.
Right. That's true. Yeah. I'm up. I'm like, it's 10 o'clock. It's still light outside. What is going on here? It's like constant. And then birds waking you up at like 4 a.m. It's like, man, come on. It's like bright. The whole thing.
Almost up to Alaska.
Yeah.
And then we're getting sound stages. We got the Harbor Islands sound stage here in Seattle, and there's a gorgeous new sound stage. I'm drawing a blank on the name. Begins with a V. On the east side of Seattle. So there's definitely kind of some exciting investment coming to the area to build the infrastructure. So Oregon's incentive, Leslie, is how do you know how many million? Like 20?
I'm not sure now. I do know that it's under review as well, and
I
Yeah,
see.
but you've had
hopefully
some
they'll
changes.
increase that as well
Yeah.
because every single time we've increased it, we've gotten more and more and more. We've had a lot of Netflix projects come here, a considerable amount of Netflix projects. We have a CBS um, show that is filming here right now, but it's still under wraps. We actually get a pretty decent amount of television here.
Okay.
We had
So,
Grandma for many years.
right.
Yeah, and before that there was two others that it's escaping my memory right now. But yeah, we've been somewhat. I mean,
It's on the come up.
you know, for small town USA,
Yeah.
we doing okay.
So what was it like watching your movie actually? Like the first time, it's in the can, but like once the post-production's done, the whole thing, and you're like, oh yeah, we're gonna watch this. What was that like?
Oh well, the thing about it is that I edited the film, so I was the editor. And what I would do was every single day that I would try to get through an entire scene of the movie as I was editing it. And then at the end of the day, I was like, okay, I feel good with this. This is what I have here. So I would send it to Michelle and I would let Michelle watch it. And then I would do another scene, and that's how we did the whole movie back and forth, back and forth. She would give feedback, and Michelle has ears that are amazing, and she's like, you know what? I can hear something going on here. Is there another take that we kind of, put in here? Or she would give some opinion, this or that, and I don't like this performance. Is there another? So, and that's how it went kind of back and forth and back and forth until we, put it all together. And then we put the whole thing together and then we watch it in its bare bones state. So we watch it with no background music, no sound design, um, and no special effects, no color correction. And you watch it and you go, oh. But that's true. That's how every film is. You're like, oh, try watching a horror film with no music and no sound effects.
No.
You literally hear people going, instead of, and so it's kind of like, okay, this is what we have. So essentially what you have is you have the gift that's in the box, right? And then you have to hand it over to your post-production team. And that's where the magic happens. And that's where we had I thought we had an incredible um, um, uh, oh,
Composer.
the guy who does our music, our
Composer.
composer. Thank you. We had an incredible composer who Michelle and I went into grave detail, scene by scene by scene, what we were trying to emotionally convey here in each one of the scenes. And we talked in detail. I don't want any banjos. I don't want to insult the intelligence of this community. I don't want banjos. I don't want harmonicas. I don't want lip harps. I don't want any of that. We wanted heavy strings. And so we wanted this whole film really to be something that was made in the 90s. We wanted it very much like Steven Spielberg, Rob Reiner, Penny Marshall, the films that I grew up loving, because I don't feel like you see them anymore. And I feel like they're being lost. I feel like everything nowadays is all about kind of avant-garde, kind of weird, kind of dark. And you just don't have a story anymore. This happens, and then this happens, and then this happens. And I wanted to go back to old-fashioned storytelling. And a lot of the critics that, if you look at our Rotten Tomatoes page, they got it. They're like, I can't believe someone did this. If you're actually looking for a film that is like old-fashioned story, like this movie could have been something that you would have seen in the 1990s, and that someone actually went back to the basics of filmmaking and made a current film with that. They were very supportive. A lot of our critics are just really, they got it. And so, like I said, once we got the film back from post-production, now our box with the gift in it had wrapping paper and it had bows and it had the gift bag. And then we watched the film and we're like,
It just came alive.
it's
Came
good.
alive. And I
Really
think that
we were thrilled.
we saw that we actually had a premiere at a theater here in Seattle, and that, like, in itself, like watching the film on the big screen with the Dolby surround sound with all these people in the theater, and just feeling their reactions as you're watching it. There's nothing like it. And I think that in itself was worth the whole experience, the whole last 3 years to me, is watching that film with an engaged audience and just feeling their reactions. There is just like, it was just so over the top satisfying for me. I was like in tears.
Wow. And did it say like, oh, I got to do this again. I need more of this. Like, yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing like the theater and watching it with a live audience like that. Like, and so, just going through COVID, and we were thinking of applying to festivals, and the festivals were not in person for 2 years at least. And it's just, they're not the same. It's so not the same to try to do a virtual festival. I think any filmmaker, anybody attending a virtual festival can agree, like, there is just something about being in a theater, even just as just somebody in the audience. Think of the movies that you love the most. You're probably in a theater, just getting the reaction and the vibe, from everybody else in the theater. Yes. Watching it. It adds so much to watching it with others.
It does. I mean, it's so funny. I was watching Forrest Gump again the other day for, like, I don't know, the 50th time. Maybe that's a low number for me. And I remember it came out when I was 16. And when it ended, I said, oh, I'll be back later on in the movie theaters today. The same day I saw it twice in the same day when I was 16. I just got my
long movie too
that you can miss. Right?
Yeah.
There's
I'm
so
just
much
like,
that you can miss.
But the theater, the bigness of it and being there and the sound, it was like, I never forget that. And, it's so getting that feeling, I think, is really important. Basically what you're saying,
Yeah. Yeah. You can glean so much of the emotions of other people in the audience that really add to the emotion that you feel. It's just like a funny movie when people are just laughing away. It makes you, like, you think it's like world's funnier because everybody else is laughing.
Yeah. It's very contagious. So where are we headed now? Like, did Maysville, obviously you love your movie. Maybe you're thinking, okay, we can do hard things. We could do this. What's the next project? What are the next ideas you're thinking about?
So we're waiting to see how well Maysville does. It's rolling out on the various different platforms. It takes a long time to get the data and to see how much money it makes and how much. We've gotten really good reviews, so that we've seen those come in, which has been great. But how well it does, financially, is one piece of the puzzle. Like, okay, how well is this going to do? What, do we have enough money to make another film, and what kind of film could we make for that money? And then Leslie, maybe you can talk to your other film ideas.
Yeah, I have about 5 other scripts that now that I'm not afraid to kind of show them, I'm not afraid to show that, that, this is the kind of writer that I am. And if you don't like it, that's okay. Because there's no one that everybody likes. There's no one film out there that everyone likes and everyone embraces. Except maybe Forrest Gump.
Come on.
So I am a huge fan of Stephen King. I don't like horror, but I do like thrillers.
Me too.
And so I have a lot of very interesting scripts that have a little bit more of a supernatural side to them.
Wow,
And,
that's my type of thing. Love that.
So I would love to be able to play with that. I have another period piece that actually involves, it's kind of Forrest Gump-ish, because it actually involves the Kennedys and the Rockefellers and the Goodyear. And I blend those 3 families in with fictional family that I made up. So it's these families interacting with this family, and it kind of shows historically how things happen because of my fictitious family that I have made up. So
It's exciting. I tell you what, I can't imagine how thrilling it must be to do something like this that takes a decent chunk of your life during a certain period, and you're devoting like everything to it. I mean, bravo for getting something like this off the ground.
Thank
And
you.
how satisfying it must be to watch something, you birth something.
It's
know?
funny you say birth. I tell people, like, people, when people ask the question you just asked, what's next for you? And I say, I think enough, it's like giving birth. You give birth and it's awful and painful and just and you feel it, to be able to want to have another child and go through the pregnancy and the birth. Enough time needs to go by to kind of forget all that and just look at what you created and be like, okay, this is amazing. I think I'm up for doing it again. But enough time, a little time needs to go by. But now we've had that time, I feel.
right, but at the same time, we have it under our belt, and we have we have an idea of what it takes, and we know how long it takes, and we also have connections, and we have relationships that we have built along the way. And I do think that moving, if we're able to get to that next level and we're ready to make that next film, I do think there are some things that are going to be a lot easier for us as far as getting it made and getting it done. So I would do it tomorrow if I had the money in my hand.
Yeah.
I really would. And I think, I think Michele would come along too. Just because, it kind of is kind of addictive.
Yeah.
Because you can do it. So you want to make the next one even better, and
Yes.
you want to just, it's fun to be a part of the game.
Yeah, I think so. Well, listen, I'll be in your next movie. It's fine. I mean, you don't have to pay me.
We'll keep you posted.
Supernatural thriller? Sure, why not?
You would be
try everything once.
perfect for my subway scene.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's awesome.
Doesn't everybody want to chase in a subway
I know,
scene?
like a gritty New York City looking subway scene, like really dirty, like crazy Matrix level. Running. Yeah, type of thing. Wow, what a pleasure to talk to you both about this. Please tell everyone how they could check out Maysville, how they can connect with you.
Yes. So we're on Amazon. We're on Google Play and YouTube. And what am I forgetting, Les? Tubi, of course. How can I forget Tubi?
Tubi, you can actually watch the film for free. You just have to watch commercials. So if you're someone who does like to get popcorn or snacks during the film, it works out great. And but if you want a true theatrical experience, watch it more on Amazon and on Google Play or YouTube. Watch it on those because when I watch a film, I want to watch the whole thing. I don't want to be interrupted. I like to turn all the lights off in the house and have that experience. And actually, if you are on Amazon Prime, we are now free on Amazon Prime if you're a Prime member. And all of those things are great. And we do know now that we are currently available. We just became available in England. So you can see us in England and you can see us in Australia. And hopefully within the next couple of months, we will be in Canada and the rest of Europe.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time being here. It's lovely to speak with you. And we got the Pacific Northwest connection going.
Well represented.
It's all here, right? The triangle right here. So thank you so much, Michele. Thank you, Leslie, and have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thanks for having us.
Have a great day.